right, so anyone surfing social media this week has surely seen this clip of Jillian Michaels saying this about slavery.
Do you realize that only less than 2% of white Americans own slaves?
And while she didn't name a specific year in her claim on CNN, she did tweet this out later saying, "I'm denigrating all of humanity by pointing out that 98% of American white people in 1860 didn't perpetrate slavery." But let's take a look at this claim. Because yes, as the data shows, in 1860, there were 393,975 slave owners in the United States out of a total population of 31,183,582, or just 1.26% of the population. But let's take a closer look at that. Because by taking a look at this map from 1860 of the percent of households that owned slaves at the time, we can see that slavery was no longer practiced in the North and was only practiced down here in the South. And so yeah, if we eliminate those 18 free states and only concentrate on the remaining 15 slave states, you can see we get that same amount of slave owners that now have a population of just 12 million. That's almost 19 million off of the original number, which gets us to 3.22% of the population owning slaves. And so yeah, if we eliminate those 18 free states and only concentrate on the remaining 15 slave states, you can see we get that same amount of slave owners that now have a population of just 12 million. That's almost 19 million off of the original number, which gets us to 3.22% of the population owning slaves. But here's another problem. If we just look at the US slave states in 1860, we can see that in the slave column here, we have almost 4 million slaves. And because they can't own themselves, we gotta minus them out too. And so if we remove them, we get 8.2 million with the same amount of slave owners, and now that number jumps up to 4.75% of the free population of these 15 states. But if we focus on just those 11 states that decided to secede from the United States in order to protect slavery, that percentage gets even bigger. So if we add up just the Confederate States, we get 316,632 slave owners and 5,582,222 people, meaning that now 5.67% of the free population own slaves. But again, this 5.67 number only deals with the patriarch of a family who actually owns those slaves, not the wife and children who stood to inherit them when he died. So if we take a look at that number, we can see that 30.8% of the free families in the Confederacy owned slaves, and that number was as high as 49% in a state like Mississippi. And that's why, Jillian, it's important to teach slavery to our school children, to know how it started, how it progressed, and what states decided to fight a war to keep it. I mean, there is zero evidence to say if these 11 states had beaten the North in the Civil War that they would have ever ended slavery. It was an economic advantage that they didn't want to let go of. And that's why it's no secret that when you take a look at the map of people that owned slaves in 1860 and compare it to the map of the states that decided to fight a war over slavery, and then compare it to a map of the violence that was brought against black people in the 10 years after Jim Crow laws were adopted in the South, and then compare it to a map of the segregation that existed all the way into the 1950s and the 1960s, it's clear that the same culture that was committed to slave ownership decades after other American states gave it up maintained that culture in those same states more than a century later. This is a picture from 1965 of a woman and her daughters. And that's why it's important to teach all history, Jillian, not just cherry pick certain percentages when they work for your argument. We need to teach kids everything and let them figure it out for themselves.